Hello everyone! Another ShantyTown devlog here, the city block builder game where you create dense urban environments by placing objects according to adjacency bonuses. First things first, since the last devlog, I decided to remove the outlines. I'm not really sure how many more times I'll flip-flop on this decision, or perhaps I'll make it an option in the menu. But for now, I feel it looks cleaner and more interesting without the outlines. Previously, I mentioned the vapor map needing some more work, so I added a few more things to spice that map up. Things like pipes, hollow buildings, and smokestacks. I was a little annoyed I couldn't place lights on the smokestacks, so I implemented a system that allows for pole snapping onto things like smokestacks and power poles. This applies to things like power lines, lights, and even signs, which is pretty cool. The game was going in the right direction, but it still hasn't captured the feeling of surprise I like to create in my games. Looking around for inspiration, and I found this stylized 3D model of a Tokyo block. It's simple, but really pulls a lot of enjoyment out with its subtle details, at least for me. It really has a feeling of, the more you look, the more you see, and I'd love to capture that. To implement that feeling, I decided to go from the ground up. No, literally, from the ground. So I was looking at the way the sidewalks wrapped around the buildings and the streets blended together and looked at my game's floor. How could I make a system that dynamically generates sidewalks? So I started by making a spline for the curb that draws itself in a circle around each segment of wall. But it didn't look great, and even more so, it doesn't overlap very well. So I scrapped that idea and started doing some research into procedural algorithms. I briefly thought the wave function collapse was the right way to do it. Basically the way it works is you make a grid that has all the possible types of pieces. Each time you pick a piece, it eliminates all the pieces that are no longer possible by its neighbors, until everything is complete, or collapsed in this case. This is really great for building procedural worlds before the game starts, but I was having trouble getting things to recalculate properly during the game when certain elements start changing. So I looked around and found something called bitmasking. A lot of pixel art games use this to pick the right landscape tile according to its neighboring tiles. Weirdly, this is exactly what I want. These types of algorithms usually work around a grid system, so I created blocks for each possible piece. Bitmasking uses a basic yes-no binary and a number for each edge. You add up those numbers and it'll pick the piece from a list. So for example, with 1, 2, 4, and 8 as the side values, you basically just add those numbers up if there is a sidewalk there. Otherwise you ignore them. So this one would have a value of 3, this one 4, this one 7, and this one 11. And when that number is determined, it just picks that number from the list and the piece is placed. When one tile changes, it checks if its neighboring tiles also have to change, and if they do, that one will check its neighboring tiles, and so on. It works well enough for now. I was planning to add bike lanes and streets with splines and things like that, but then I got distracted with making a tram line. You can't really have a tram line without a tram, so I made a tram too. And then I made it ride the line, of course.
Well, duh.
Then the issue arose of what to do with objects as they cross the edge of the map. I thought it's probably best if they just fade out, so I made a system that takes the edge of the map and uses a noise pattern to paint up translucency, and voila, it looks pretty good. Now, last month I mentioned I might have a demo ready, and you may be here waiting for me to get to the point of telling you where you can find that demo, but I decided not to push for that. I've been spending a lot of my time working on the DLC for Kainga that just released, and I decided not to stress myself over arbitrary deadlines. This time, I want to ensure that I take time to live my life instead of the all-day, everyday approach I used while making Kainga.
To be an artist is to do one thing only.
And I am a bad artist.
An artist gives all they have to the art, the whole.
Also, I wasn't happy with the game design of ShantyTown itself. Putting down objects in the right places is fun. Adjacency bonuses are also fun to consider. And that part of the game is great. The trouble comes when choosing what items you want to place. Originally, I came up with a 3-choice system that I borrowed directly from Kainga. You get to open new packs every time you fill this bar, all the way to the top. Each time you do, the requirement to fill the bar gets a little bit higher. This is borrowed from Islanders, which works really well for them. Packs have a combination of multiple objects, and very cleverly I might add, the packs that you don't choose get a random additional bonus item to make them more enticing in the future. On paper, it all works great.
That's good.
You pick what you want to add, place those objects down, earn more points to pick more objects. This seems great.
That's good.
In practice, it's almost impossible to calculate which pack is going to be the most valuable.
Ooh, that's bad.
And if that information were to be available, it would be too overwhelming. When you make a choice and place your objects, it feels unfairly punishing to run out before you made enough points. It kind of feels like you've been tricked by the game, and that's not good.
It's a trap!
That's bad.
I also found myself, as the designer, trying to guide players to a certain outcome with objectives by stacking and fiddling with percentages of object spawning, but maps would still end up looking weird, just by random chance and also by player choice.
That's bad.
So I decided to go back to the purpose of the game and ask myself what the problem was, and I think it lies in the choice itself. Sometimes less choice can be liberating. I decided to try a new approach. The player always gets 3 objects to place. When they place one, they get another. And when they place that one, they get another. Then on the side, I can have a list of all the objects available on the map. This helps me curate how many of each object there are to keep things under control, and the player can see what other options are possible. The new name of the game is you place as many objects as you want, wherever you want, until you reach the total points goal. This removes the need for objectives. There's a lot of mental freedom here, and the player just keeps placing objects. And for me as the creator, I get to choose exactly how many objects are in each map. It's totally different, but I think I'm going to run with it for now and see how it turns out. It does look a little bit busy, so I thought I could gray out the items that are not currently available, and also get rid of the numbers and replace it with a multiple layer visual, as well as make the buttons themselves a little bit smaller. I'm actually shocked how much more relaxing the game is with this change, and how much of a mental block the previous system put into the flow state of the game. It's actually surprisingly fun. Of course, I've also been adding a bunch of little changes, things like rain effects on the water, a new single-click placement system for objects like vents, electricity wires, and pipes, and of course a settings menu. I have to say I'm pretty happy with how things are going. I'm also enjoying the feedback and suggestions in the comments, so keep it up. But I think I'll stop it here. Until next time, bye bye.